Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 57 of the RocknRoll Beer Guy Podcast. This episode is brought to you by One Effing Inc. If you go to the website, oneeffinginc.com/effingradart, you can pick up your official RocknRoll Beer Guy t-shirts or hoodies. In this episode, I talked to Kevin Antreassian. He's the owner of Backroom Studios. He was the rhythm guitarist for the band Dillinger Escape Plan. He also had the band Knife the Glitter, which just recently released their album. We talk about his career in Dillinger Escape Plan. We talk about his career now, what it was like being there for the farewell tour of the band. He talks about the accident that they had on the road, which was pretty intense. And we talk a little bit about video games and his Twitch stream. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Cheers. Hello.
Hey, man, how are you?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Good, bud. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to be driving, so I'm
oh, yeah,
hoping
no
you
worries.
have good service. All right, cool.
Just be safe.
Yeah, no, it's good. I got the hands-free thing. Cool.
All right, welcome everyone to the RocknRoll Beer Guy Podcast. I'm here with Kevin Antreassian. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's close enough. That's as close as anybody's going to get.
And you played guitar in the Dillinger Escape Plan for how many years? The last couple years, right?
Yeah, I think it was the last 3 years, since 2015.
Very cool.
Or 14, I can't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember, honestly.
And, this is the final lineup, actually, according to the story. Dillinger Escape Plan's done for the foreseeable future.
As far as I know.
So how's life been post DEP?
Very busy. I had maybe a week where I kind of just sat around and played a lot of Zelda on my Nintendo, and I relaxed and kind of unwound a bit, and then I went right into Slam. Now I'm Slam with mixing 5 or 6 records at the same time, and just trying to get back on track with all that stuff. So pretty busy.
Yeah. You have a studio called Backroom Studios.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the projects you're working on, or is that not?
Yeah, sure. I have a couple solo artists. I have this one band I'm working with right now called Windfair. They're kind of like a black metal band with there's a lot of violins in there, actual violins, which is cool.
Nice.
So there's a lot of fun stuff going on. I got a decent amount of black metal this last couple months, which is interesting. Yeah. It's hard for me honestly to think back right now on how many projects I'm working on, but yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's fun. And we're starting a whole new YouTube channel this year for gear reviews and interviews and that whole tech side of it. So that's kind of fun.
That's very cool. Yeah, that sounds like something I'm going to be watching.
Cool.
Yeah, what are you doing? Any music for yourself? I know you had the Knife the Glitter project that you released finally that you've been working on.
Yes, so we have that, which is finally out. But now I'm just going to be, for the meantime, playing with my group that I was playing with before Dillinger called Mothership. It's kind of like a 70s throwback, prog band, like Rush or Yes type vibe.
Mothership.
Yeah.
With Kelly?
There's actually another band called Mothership, but we are not them, obviously.
Okay, all right. That's what I was going to say. Kelly Jewett, I had him on the show, actually.
We found out that there was another band that was actually playing called Mothership, but we don't really care because we're not planning on touring with it or anything. It's just kind of for fun. Gotcha.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's fun. So, has it been difficult at all, not being on the road, or have all these projects just kept you super busy and you're not even thinking about it?
Yeah, I've been kind of dealing with that transition back and forth for the last few years, and it's a lot of learning on my end of how to manage the mixing and the like working with all these bands and then coming back and then going back out on the road and back and forth like that. So to me, it's actually kind of nice to just be in one place for a little while, just because when you're back and forth so often, like doing international tours and what have you, it's hard to really gain momentum on any front. You can't really dig deep into a project because you're going to leave in a week and you can't really get invested in it time-wise. So for someone like me, it's kind of nice to kind of be able to sink my teeth back into my my business.
Yeah, and it seems to be doing good. I mean, I've seen your posts. You got like merch, you got 5 projects that you're working on. So obviously, it's doing well for you.
Yeah, and that's just my side of it. There's I think in total we have like 17 people that are there now. So
wow.
So we're busy. We're the calendar is totally slammed and things are good as usual. Yeah, so I can't really complain on that area at all.
Nice. And I was going to ask you if you could tell me a little bit of how you were introduced to Dillinger as a guitarist. Like, how did you get involved with the band?
Sure. Yeah, so it kind of goes back a ways. I think I was on some like weird hardcore video website before the internet was like real speedy, and I like would wait for like 20 minutes to watch like part of a video back then on dial-up. Yeah, and so I caught like one of the Mullet Burden video, and I was like totally blown away by like the way the band, like the energy of the show and everything. And the music was like whatever. Like I think that was secondary to me at that point. I just cared about like how the whole vibe was so like crazy. It was just chaotic, and I really got into that. So I kind of tried to get into the band a little bit, and I ended up buying like Calculating Infinity off of a friend's recommendation, and I hated it at first. I really quickly gave it away to somebody else because I just was like, I can't. This is too much for me. It just literally sounded like noise. I couldn't understand what's happening. Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then I started playing with Knife to Glitter at that time, I think, and it just took my ear a little while to develop and like understand that kind of music because it's totally different than anything else I had heard at the time. And so it was a slow relationship, and then I got back into them. I saw them live a couple times, and then I ended up seeing their old guitar player Brian in my local mall, and I just approached him and asked him about guitar lessons. And so he ended up forwarding me to Ben, who was local to me.
Yeah. And
then Ben just started taking me under his wing and teaching me guitar for a while. And then it was tough, too, because he would, we could only do it when he was not touring. So there'd be breaks in between. But, then we kind of, like, lost contact for a while when they got, like, really heavy into a tour cycle. And I was still in college, so it was weird. I was in school for audio engineering and classical guitar. And all these weird, like happenstance things started happening at the same time where my band, Knife to Glitter, had lost our second rehearsal space. We got kicked out. So we had never paid for rehearsal before. We always just used somebody's garage or something. And so we were like, shit, we need to like find a rehearsal space. And we had heard about the local rehearsal space that Dillinger used for a long time because we were fans, obviously, but we didn't know anything about it. So I thought it would be crazy. I heard that the guy was selling it, and had tried to sell it for a while. So I ended up needing the rehearsal space. So I ended up, instead of just renting it, I just bought it.
Oh, shit.
And that was like, so that was like my job after school, was kind of like that, like managing that. And then since Dillinger rehearsed there, I kind of, got to catch back up with those guys. And then they heard like my band practicing, and they thought it was cool, so they brought us out on tour with them. And that kind of like sparked up the relationship again. And then we just started hanging out and seeing each other often. And I was their guitar tech for a while. And I kind of eventually, after all those years, just weaseled my way into the band, more or less.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's been one of those things with the band that there has kind of been a rotating door musicians that kind of go through it. Like there's always been Ben, and Greg joined pretty early on, but there has always been a rotating door.
Yeah, I think Liam was there, for longer than Greg, technically.
Yeah. Liam was there too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But in terms of second guitar and drums, there's always been some kind of movement, and it's been crazy. You hear people always like, "Oh, what's the best lineup?" And it's like I don't even see it that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's every album has been an evolution for the band, as much as I've seen. So. Yeah, man, that's an interesting story. So you've been part, kind of, even though you weren't playing with the band, you've been around the band for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, when we were like practicing in our little rehearsal room, we would always, and our rehearsal room wasn't like a nice rehearsal room because I didn't want to like give us my band that wasn't paying any rent and like a real space. So we like went in like essentially like the boiler room, and we had this like shitty room that we practiced in all the time. But it was great. And we would just talk amongst ourselves and be like, yo, if we could ever, like, open up for Dillinger, that would be, like, the highlight of this band. And we could probably pretty much call it quits after that. And, that was just, like jokingly. We never thought that was going to happen. But then Ben approached us about doing that. And then actually going on tour with them and being the opening act and getting paid and not having – and then he asked us – he said, if you guys do, like, merch for us and, like, help us out and, like, I guitar tech for them and stuff – then like we could stay on the bus with them and like the spare bunks and just become like kind of like part of the crew. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. So that dream kind of like for us came true in like a really bizarre way. And then after that tour, we played like a couple like local shows, and it just wasn't the same as like playing out with them, obviously. So we kind of just like agreed to just call it a night with the band. Just end it on like a better note. Yeah.
And so what sparked the interest of getting the album out? Because I know you guys had been working on it for a long time, for The Knife to Glitter.
Yeah, so it seemed like it was, I know it sounds so bizarre, 10 years to get something done is like a ridiculous amount of time, but when you're appointed as the point person for something that you're not getting paid for, and it kind of takes a lot of time, and so pretty much I mix and track bands all day, like all week. Yeah. So the last thing I want to do in my free time is
work
that.
On that.
Yeah. Especially on your own music. Working on your own music is horrible because you're just too close to it and you know too much about it, and it's just nothing ever gets done because everything needs to be like super ridiculously meticulous. Yeah. And it's not really super productive, Just because I enjoy working on my car and I know how to doesn't mean I should, like I bring it to a mechanic so it can be done quickly and someone can be accountable for it, done in a timely fashion. I just hate working on my own music. It sucks.
I hear you, man. I've had a hard time. I mean, I've done some solo stuff every once in a while, but I was in a band for 10 years and it's hard for me to sit down and be like, I'm going to do this on my own. I guess I just depended on having the bandmates, like just the camaraderie, the connection you have of working with someone else. Like, I don't know. I can't, it's a lot harder for me to do anything on my own than it is to do it with a band.
Totally. I totally hear that. And I agree with you 100%. I would never recommend any artist work on their own music for more than like pre-production or a demo or something. Having if I'm going to work on my new project, I'm definitely not going to be at the board doing it. I will gladly pay somebody else to take charge and, kind of work with us because I don't want to just be the artist and worry about my performance and stuff. And I don't want to worry about the tone necessarily. I don't want to worry about all the little things about editing and engineering. It just takes away from the performance experience for me. And I will never probably do that again.
Well, you mentioned the fact that you record bands, so that's got to be even more annoying. Like for me, I sell beer for a living now, and my friends hit me up during the week or on the weekends, and they're like, "Yo, let's go to the bar, dude." I'm like, no. I'm good.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I'll use the same analogy again. It's like when you're a mechanic, I can't imagine that after a long, 12-hour day that you're going to come home and work on your car. It's an insane thing for me to do. So
you would have totally to really, really love it, or I mean, even it's just next level stuff. That's next level.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. So what are you listening to nowadays? I mean, what are some of the bands you're into that are new?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I always default back to the classics and just stuff that I grew up with.
Okay.
Not that I don't listen to new music, but if I'm listening to new music, it's probably honestly music that I'm working on.
Okay.
Just because it takes so much energy for me to again, just what we were talking about, seek out bands. When I'm literally been today, even I was there at 11 and I just left at 7:30. So I've been listening and working on music for 8 hours, and now for me to just try to find a new band is it's exhausting.
Do you even care to listen to music when you get home? No, right?
I mean, it depends. It has the mode. I have to be in the right mindset to want to. Because immediately my brain switches to producer mode. It's really hard for me just to enjoy it,
Yeah, you start breaking it down, or oh, that snare sounds like shit, or.
Yeah, it's like a disease in a way. That's why sometimes with the more retro stuff, where I know the production is what it is, I don't even have to think about that. It's just
just enjoy it.
It's just the production is so secondary to the overall sound, song, that I just can enjoy the song for what it is.
That makes sense. I've been getting into a lot more, just more obscure stuff that I wasn't aware of growing up. Now that I'm getting older, I'm appreciating other things. I recently discovered Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio, and I had never heard of it before. And I know that makes me sound like some kind of amateur or something to some people, but to me, Dio was Dio and Black Sabbath, and that's it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally.
But it's cool to listen back and you just get lost in that music. And like you said, you don't really worry about the production because it's old. It's they had nothing better. They did the best they could.
Totally. And for a lot of the projects, what they did back then was almost more creative than what we can do now, because they were limited by so many factors, whereas we don't have really very many limitations, So they had to get real creative with all kinds of techniques, and just all that stuff was a new frontier for them, which is super awesome. And they had tape. They only could work on tape, so they had to get it right.
I can't even imagine that shit. Oh no.
Yeah, just so many bands come in and they can't even play the parts they wrote.
Yeah, because they write them in programs now. They write them in MIDI stuff, and it's hey, I came up with this crazy idea, but I don't even know how to do it.
Dude, it's too common. It's too common. It's crazy.
I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that? I mean, you got to respect the creativity, but at the same time, you shouldn't write anything that you can't pull off.
I mean, it's definitely a complicated scenario. I think that those programs are great, and they can help you be creative in a different way, because you can write things that you normally wouldn't think about doing. If you look at a guitar, a lot of people are stuck looking at the guitar the same way every time. So sometimes they'll do something like an alternate tuning, where it's they can play the same thing that they're comfortable playing, but it'll come out totally different. So using a program to help you write can be kind of another way to do that. But the problem is when you rely on the program and you don't actually learn what you need to learn, and they shortcut it, so they won't put the time in to actually play that properly. That's where the problem comes in, when you kind of use it as a crutch instead of just a tool,
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the case for technology as a whole. Just use the technology to help elevate you, but don't use it as a crutch, like you said. Yeah,
totally. And that happens far too often, and then bands or musicians or artists get really they get a little bummed out when we come to track and they're having a hard time cutting it in there, and we got to do take after take after take, because I mean, I don't understand when people want to pay all this money to go and do a record properly and then they can't play it.
Yeah, exactly. Save your money, sit at home and play those parts,
Totally. I've had to send some bands home because they just weren't up to par. because it's not doing either of us a service if I just take their money and say, oh, this is the best we could do. You know, it's like, just come back when you're ready and we'll do it better.
Yeah, well, you know, it's an advantage for bands that do go through the process. So when they come into the studio nowadays, they come off looking like rock stars or whatever because they show up and do their thing, you know, and they do it right. I guess for me, for example, like if I were to go back in the studio with the band at this point, it would be that, like, we would know everything, you know, before going in. So maybe the producer's stoked to work with that, to work with somebody like that, you know?
Totally. It's not everybody, though. I will say that in the recent years, the level of musicians that I have got under my belt has been significantly elevated. I don't know what that's from, if that's from me just doing it for so long and guys being older when they come into the studio, like they come in with repeat projects and, you know, like a couple of years later they're more experienced or whatever. I have no idea what the change is, but it seems to be within the last few years, the caliber of musician has increased significantly, where I'm usually not dealing with that kind of amateur, you know, like performance problems, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, and then, like you said, there is a different caliber of technicality coming out too with, you know, some of these bands that are getting popular, you know, that super techy, progressive, like, I don't want to say Animals as Leaders because they've been around for a while, but kind of from that class, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's great because I think music needs to keep evolving, and it's nice to see that people's tastes are evolving. Not to say that, you know, progressive music is better than anything else. I'm just saying that, like, it's more complicated, so your ear has to, like I, from my own experience, has to develop, and you have to, you know, it's like people are okay with that complicated, like all those complicated things now, and I think that's, whereas when Knife to Glitter was playing a lot back in like early 2000s, a lot of that stuff was hard for people to get into because it was just, you know, for our band and the many other bands we toured with, it was just too much for them to take in at the time. Now I feel like if we were a band to come out and play now, it would have been so much easier for us because that music is way more commonplace.
Yeah, for sure. It's at least more accepted, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So let me ask you: do you see that happening relatively soon? Like you going back on some kind of crazy touring cycle, or is your life now the studio?
For the foreseeable future, I'm definitely gonna keep it close to home and do the studio thing. And you know, if I'm gonna do any playing out, it's gonna be on a smaller scale. I have so much to do with the business that it's, and I have a lot more people relying on me now that I have to kind of focus on that, which is good because that's, you know, I love playing music, obviously, and I love playing in Dillinger with, you know, those are my family. And if, you know, if for some crazy reason they want to like start it back up in like 4 years, 5 years, who knows, whatever, I'll be there, obviously. But for the moment, yeah, I've got to really get all this, like, we're launching a lot of things now, and I have to kind of be the center of all that.
Well, that's good. That's good for you. I mean, it's also, I wanted to ask you physically how you feel, because those shows were intense. Like, playing for Dillinger is kind of a insane workout. If you're listening to the show and you've never heard the band, or just YouTube a video of Dillinger Escape Plan, so you can see the performance, like, there's a lot of jumping around, a lot of jumping into the crowd, a lot of diving off of things, it's intense. And, you know, how is your body adjusting to that? Like, do you feel any kind of like, oh shit, my knees are dead, you know, anything like that?
Well, yeah, and I'm one of the younger guys. And
yeah, exactly.
You know, I look over and I see Ben doing it, you know, and he's been doing it for 20 years. You know, he's, in my eyes, he's one of the, you know, like the forefathers of that kind of manic live stage show thing. And he's been a constant in doing that crazy shit. And, you know, obviously the other guys too, Greg and Liam. And I just try to, like, I look over there at these guys who are older than me and have been doing it longer, and I get exhausted just watching them, you know. And I try to, like, my part in the band I feel like is a little bit different, you know. Like, I try to, you know, keep it lively, but I'm trying to keep it down, you know. Like, I'm trying to a point. So But yeah, it got a lot more difficult for me after we got into that accident, and I was kind of a mess, and I had to play in a back brace for a month or so.
Oh my God! How do you do that? Like, how do you play in a back brace? That's
really, really uncomfortably. Very uncomfortably.
Man. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I know it's a sucky situation. I mean, I was involved in a head-on terrible accident when I was 22. I'm 36 now, and now I'm feeling all of like the leftover residuals of that accident now that I'm older. So
yeah,
were you asleep when it happened?
Yeah, so now that the whole like litigation of it is kind of like wrapped up, I could probably talk about it. At least, from my experience, I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was super brutal. I never would wish that upon any band. We were sleeping and we woke up to a commercial truck driving straight into us at full speed. And that's not how you want to. It's not how you want to get hit, and that's definitely not how you want to wake up.
Hell no, man, that's insane.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. I woke up to the sound of my bones cracking, which is really weird, not typical. Oh. And I ended up with 2 fractured vertebrae, and I was in the hospital, laid out in a bed for 10 days.
Good Lord, man! Poland. I mean, it's in Poland, which is scary enough.
I couldn't talk to anybody. It was so bizarre. It was just it was a really isolated, weird experience because, I was kind of by myself in the hospital for the most part, and I was just like, thank God I had my phone charger. Otherwise, it would have been really hard.
And isn't it kind of weird out there with isn't the electricity different? Like it's 220 out there or no?
Yeah, they run off of a different voltage. I think it is 220, and I had an adapter. Like when you go out there, you bring a bunch of adapters.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But you can't talk to anybody. You could barely talk to the doctors. Yeah, what you did get was kind of like broken, English or whatever, and you didn't know how serious things were because, they make everything out to be like a certain dynamic, and they don't really have the nuance that we have.
God damn, that's got to be fucking terrifying. Like just not knowing what's going on, and are you doing better not just physically, but the mental trauma of having to deal with that, like sitting around not knowing what's going on, especially with your back, like your vertebrae is very sensitive. Like you could have been paralyzed or something,
Yeah, they for a while it was obviously really bad, especially when I got back home. I just adjusting to normal life it took a lot for me. Anytime I would be driving and I would have to stop short, I would get a weird flashback, or anytime I'd watch a movie and there was some kind of crazy car wreck, I would get really weirded out for a good 2 minutes. So there was that, and I think it's past me now at this point. I don't have a fear of being on a bus anymore. Because when you're in those bunks, man, they're not really big, and it's kind of like you're in your little coffin. So I didn't want to I was definitely not excited to get back into one of those things for sure. But we did a bunch of tours after that, so we made it happen.
Yeah, that's crazy that you guys, you kind of just went back on the road almost immediately. And I mean, any other band, even myself included, I would have just been like, nah, dude, I'm good. I need a break,
Yeah, well, we were touring with Soundgarden on the next one, so we kind of had to
you gotta have
suck
to
it up.
Yeah, you kind of have to do that. Yeah, fuck, man.
Yeah, but then that one ended in tragedy too. So we have bad luck.
Yeah, that was a rough run right there because I remember hitting everybody up that day. Like, damn, dude, I'm so sorry. The day of Chris Cornell passing. That's, and it was in the middle of the tour, right? You guys weren't done.
Yeah, no, we just saw him 2 nights earlier. We were on stage with them, and then I wake up, and then my fiance is like, "Yo, Chris Cornell just died," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I literally had no idea what she was talking about.
Fuck.
So bizarre. Yeah, I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, it was I was still half asleep, kind of, and then it took a second to settle in, and then she showed me Facebook. I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I read that it wasn't some kind of freak accident, that it was suicide, and I was like, "This is so crazy, man." But yeah, man, what are you gonna do?
Let me ask you, because you were closer to the situation. I mean, I'm probably going to talk to Ben about it tomorrow too. But do you think that the fact that the accident and then also this with Chris Cornell and all of that kind of is what pushed the band towards saying, hey, you know what, we're just going to hang up our gloves while we're still on top? Or was this something that had been boiling for a long time?
Oh, yeah, no, I think that decision was made way earlier.
Okay.
We had made the decision about, or they had made the decision, rather, about ending the band after the touring cycle. So the touring cycle, I think it was a little confusing for some people because they just read headlines and they saw that Dillinger was breaking up, and then we kept touring, but they didn't read that it's a touring cycle, and they maybe don't understand what that means. But like an album's touring cycle could be a year to 2 years or something, So, and I kind of had a feeling that something like that was coming. So when like Ben told me about it, like the decision, that I was like, yeah, that seems about right, because yeah, like I said, man, I've only been doing it for a few years with them, and it's exhausting. I don't know how these guys have been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and in the back half, like the band is the biggest as it's ever been. So, even though it's still like an underground kind of punk rock type vibe, it's a big-ish type band, and we have a lot of certain luxuries that they didn't have 20 years ago. When it was a lot harder for them.
Yeah.
So it's kudos to them, man. Like, I can't believe that they've made it go this long in a way.
For sure, and they went out on top. Like they went out at the top of their game in terms of popularity. I give it, I give them so much respect for that because it keeps it special. You don't want to be the band. You don't want to be, as much as everybody loves Metallica, dude. Like, I don't want to be Metallica. I don't want to be playing shows in my 50s and 60s. Like, no, man, it's not the same, and this keeps it special. And also Dillinger is not really a type of band that I want to see in a stadium. As awesome as it would be for the band, for the guys, it's not that type of music. It's more of a small club show thing,
For sure. When we play like live, like big festival type stages, we kind of like change the way we play in a way, because you have to treat it like two different entities, playing on a small club, and then playing on a giant open festival stage. Like, they're both cool in their own ways, because it affords you the luxury of doing different things and that kind of thing. But you definitely have to treat it like a completely different animal as it is.
Did you get to play any of those crazy super small shows? Because I know they've done like people's basements, and it's just like, people packed up like sardines and on top of the stage. Did you ever get to do one of those insane shows? Oh
yeah, we did that whole West Coast run where we did all like the underplay shows, and they were like super small, tight little bars and stuff. And actually, we played when Knife the Glitter was on tour with them. We did a basement in Jersey, in New Brunswick, and we opened for them on that show. So I was there technically, and it was insane. I get to watch from a different angle, but it was definitely insane.
Yeah, the last show I saw with you guys was at the Observatory here in Santa Ana, but it was a Constellation Room, which is the smaller one.
Yeah,
because that venue has two. If anybody's not familiar, that venue has two spots, and the Observatory is like a bigger, not too big, but still bigger than the Constellation Room. The Constellation Room is like a freaking bedroom. It's insane. I almost went to the hospital at that show.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I hope it wasn't because of me.
No, it wasn't you. I was actually right in front of you, and Liam and I had met up, and we were talking and whatnot, and I ended up just going to the front and jumping on stage when the whole crowd takeover happened. And I'm there with Greg pulling people up from the pit like onto the stage, and I got shoved right into the drum kit, like super hard, and fucking just fell over. And I just got like pieces of, drum hardware, like stabbing me in the back. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, man. I know it. I know it all too well. Like, and I get those times when those like kind of rare occasions happen. It's like, it's awesome. And it's also fucking terrifying, because everybody means well, everybody's a good, they mean well, but when you have that kind of crowd mentality and you have, that much just power on stage, it's fucking dangerous, man. Like the slightest, somebody getting pushing in the back can be turned into a large force in the front, And if you get hit by that, it sucks.
Oh yeah. And there's those, especially if you're in the crowd, there's those moments in certain shows where it's like a wave, like just the people behind you are pushing. So there's nothing you can do but just fall over. Like there's no way you're stopping that. Like you're pushing into the person in front of you, and it is scary as hell, man. And also the equipment. I mean, your equipment gets fucking trashed.
Yeah. That's why we have to have it in those big rack cases. Otherwise, when it does topple over, at least it's safe in there usually. At least, the 1/4-inch ends usually break off or something. But it's part of the show, man. I mean, it's what we signed up for in a way,
Yeah. All right. And one last final thing about Dillinger, and then I'll ask you a couple more things and then wrap it up. How was it playing those final shows? I mean, I was trying so hard to get my money together to fly out there, at least be there for one of them, but I couldn't make it. A bunch of my buddies made it, but how were those shows? Like, what were the emotions backstage? Was it more of like just another day, just get it out of the way, and then we'll deal with it later, or was there like high emotions going on throughout?
I think in the band, everybody kind of had their own thing. For me, it was pretty emotional in a lot of different ways, like happiness because they were awesome shows. There was obviously a lot of sadness involved because, this thing that was super familiar for me for the last, I don't know, a long time in my life, like 10 years maybe or more. I don't know how long it's been, is now coming to a close. And then there was even frustration because we were taking on such a massive these set lists were just spanning all kinds of different albums and getting the people we got involved and rehearsing with them or not rehearsing with them and just cramming all this material into such a small time frame was really fucking difficult. So
fuck yeah,
there was all of this stuff, man. It was a bunch of highs, a bunch of lows, but it was great, and it came out perfect, so.
Do you know if they filmed that to like release it as something? Because there's a bunch of video footage online, but I think it'd be cool if they did some kind of release for that, the final show.
Yeah, a bunch of the Backroom crew and a bunch of the guys from Metal Injection teamed up, and I think there is something planned officially for that. I'm not really. I don't think I'm supposed to speak on anything directly because I don't really know much, honestly, either. Mm-hmm. But hopefully something will come out of that. I hope. And I don't know when. I have no idea if it'll be anytime soon. But we do have some content.
Cool, man. Well, that'll be it for Dillinger. Thank you for talking about that. I mean, at this difficult times, I'm sure, and it's kind of like somebody asking you about your ex-girlfriend or something.
Nah, dude, it's all good. It's mostly all good memories. Those guys are like my extended family, and it was all great, man. It was awesome.
Cool. Now, I wanted to ask you have your own podcast, or am I reading that wrong?
No, we don't have our own podcast, but like I said, we're going to be doing the YouTube channel very, very shortly. We're just kind of wrapping up some content at the moment, but then, that will give us an open forum to do whatever kind of media we need to.
Cool. Do you have a name for it? Is it just going to be like Backroom Studios,
I believe it's going to be just the Backroom Studios YouTube channel. And, cool. We're going to have different subcategories under that with, like, all kinds of different videos.
Cool. I also saw that you do some Twitch streaming.
Yeah, when I can... Currently, I don't have power at my house because of these fucking blizzards, but, when I can get time... Right. Yeah, so we're shacked up with my family until we can get power restored. It's been, like, 5 days at this point.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. But
is it a lot of snow or is it mostly rain right now for you guys?
Right now, there's nothing. Right, like as I'm talking to you, there's like almost no snow left on the ground. Okay. But when it came down last week, it was insane. And then it's supposed to start up in like the next 20 minutes or so. It's supposed to start coming down and be like another foot or so. So that's another bummer. Winter is never ending.
I'm from Jersey too. I mean, I was born there and lived there till I was 14. I was there for the 92 blizzard where we had 5 feet of snow.
Wow, yeah, I remember
6 feet of snow.
That was crazy. I totally remember that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we were talking about twitching. Yeah.
Yeah, the Twitch. I try to get together with a bunch of my buds who play games, and We do some fun Twitch stuff every now and again. I know that's a crazy market to get into just because it's so flooded with everybody, and I honestly don't understand the draw in watching somebody else play a video game.
Yeah,
but
I don't get it either.
we try to make it interesting, and I don't know if anybody gets a chance to tune in. It's at least funny, I'll say that much.
Yeah, and there's. I mean, I see the point for certain places. There's a bar here called Guildhall, and it's an esports bar. So you're there drinking, and instead of baseball and basketball, it's people on Twitch. Wow,
that's crazy! I didn't know that the esports made it into bars. That's wild.
Yeah, it's an esports bar, and they're not the only ones from what I heard. So I get that. Like, I'd rather watch someone play video games at a bar.
Yeah,
but I don't get the market of sitting at home and watch. I rather play. I want to play the game. You know that.
I hear you, man. I'm right there with you. That's when someone told me that people are getting rich off this thing. I'm like, what? How? Like, why do so many people care about what other people are doing? But hey, I don't know.
Yeah, and there is a market there for you too, man. I mean, I know Tomo from the band 30 Seconds to Mars. He's doing that now. And like they offer money. They give you, Twitch will give you money. Like, hey, here's $25 for every person that gets subscribed. So if you got 1,000 subscribers, you got $25,000. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, the guys who get up there do make some good change. It's like anything though. It's like, since it's so flooded with that, it's really hard to, like, unless you have some kind of a previous social media outlet or like following, it's hard to just break into that. You know, you really have to be able to draw your audience into that world. So
yeah. I mean, you'll get automatic, like, you'll get a bunch of Dillinger fans, even if they're not into Twitch, they'll just do it just to check it out, you know?
That'd be cool.
Yeah, but it's awesome. So, like, what games do you like playing on there?
For a while we were playing PUBG, or people know it's called Battlegrounds.
Yeah.
We were doing that for a while, and then that kind of just got, like, I don't want to sound like a snob, but that got super flooded and everybody in the world plays it now. And that doesn't mean that the game isn't good, but we've been playing it for at least over a year at this point, maybe 2 years. So I'm kind of over it personally and onto, like, different types of games like that. Okay. We play Duck Game a lot, which is a really not super well-known game. It's kind of like a 4-player Super Smash Brothers type thing, but with ducks, and it's hilarious.
Oh, you know what? I heard about it. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We play some other kind of like Tom Clancy military style games, and then I play VR too because I'm a big VR nut. So rarely I'll stream that as well.
Are you doing PSVR or are you going Oculus on the computer?
Oculus on the computer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been dying to get a good rig to be able to get, an Oculus, but it's just so much investment right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to have the hardware to run it, but if you can get your hands on it, dude, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I've been able to play with it. I mean, there's this buddy of mine had it, and there's a game where you just paint around you, which I thought was crazy. Like, you just get different paintbrushes, and you're painting in 3D all around your living room and stuff, and even just simple things like that are fascinating. And then you play games like Resident Evil 7 or something. I played that game normal, not VR, and I don't think I can handle the VR.
Yeah, that game is supposed to be really horrifying in VR. They don't have it yet for the PC because they're still under their exclusive time frame with the PlayStation VR. But when that's over, hopefully they'll port it to the PC, and I'm looking forward to playing that one. A lot.
Dude, I couldn't even imagine it. Like, playing it not VR, I just turned all the lights off and got in the zone, and I remember just getting up and going to the bedroom where my fiance was and just like hugging her, and I'm like, I don't feel good.
Yeah, dude, my girl will often at times just come in and she'll just scare me or just poke me, and I'll be so into I'll be playing like Doom VR, and it'll fucking freak me out, and I hate it so much because you don't know what's happening, and then your whole reality gets changed. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, you can't see. Do you think that the HoloLens type of deal is the future, or do you think we're going to stay with the headsets, like the VR headsets?
I mean, I think ultimately in the far, far, far future, it'll just be like some kind of hologram setup. But for the more immediate future, it's going to be headsets for the next probably 10 years. And then after that, hopefully we'll move into that augmented reality realm. But, it's everything in VR is still kind of infantile, and it's early stages with everything, but the progress of each generation is very significant, and I'm very excited to see where it goes, because for me as a gamer, the ultimate way to play a game is just to be interactive with it and kind of like get rid of that line of, like the two-dimensional screen. Like there's really nothing interactive about that. But when you start to be inside the game and your mind is tricked kind of like that you're there, that's when it starts to get really, really, really fun for me.
Yeah, and definitely the technology has gotten there, because I remember being young and going to places like a GameWorks where they had VR, and it was super rough. It was just old-looking polygons, and you couldn't really get into it because it just, it looks fake as shit. Now you get in there and it looks like it could be the real world. You're just looking at kind of distorted, but, it's pretty close.
Totally, yeah. They've always tried it, and it's always been in sci-fi stuff, and, it's something they've been working towards for a while. And, even in the last couple, because I had, like, an Oculus development, I think the DK2 I had, and just over those like non-consumer iterations, it's come a long way in like a few years. So now they're having wireless VR, and it's 10 years from now, man, it's gonna be pretty nuts.
I hope I'm still like I'm not like a cranky old man, like I hope I can still in 10 years. I hope I'm still up for it.
Yeah, I'm sure you will be, man. It'll be so much fun.
Cool, dude. And then the last thing I had was beer. I don't know if you drink. Your beard definitely suggests that you do, but I'm not sure if you do.
Well, I don't really drink beer per se. If I do, it's lambic. And I know that's a really weird kind of vibe, but that's the only one I can get into. Yeah.
No, they make tremendous lambics. That's one of the oldest beer styles in the world. So it's it makes sense.
Those are delicious.
Awesome. Like, is there any specific that you know off the top of your head that you like a lot, like lambic wise? Is it just Cantillon for you, or?
Yeah, no, I don't even know like the name brands, but like when my buds go out and like they can order me a lambic, like that's what I'll if it's available, because it's not everywhere. That's usually what I grab.
Nice. Okay, cool. You're not a big. Do you drink anything else, or you just don't drink?
Not really. Sometimes we'll have like just something like some mixed drink or whatever, a cocktail. But I'm not a huge beer guy. I've tried so many times, but I just can't get past the hoppy taste.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's. It's not for everyone, man. It's not for everyone. Like, I've thankfully been able to drink all kinds, but lately I just find myself drinking whiskey because it's less fattening and cheaper.
There you go.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I know you got stuff to do and you got to go hide from that blizzard that's coming.
Yeah, gotta get ready.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking some time. Check out Backroom Studios online, guys, if you guys are in the area and want to, record an album. I'm supposing. Are you taking, new acts, or how's that going?
Yeah, totally, man. Send us a message. We'll see if we can work it out.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And Kevin, thanks again.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
All right. Later.